Hi, I'm Dr. Rick Duplantis, and you're watching It's Your Health. My co-host tonight is Debbie Ryan. Our topic tonight is Alzheimer's, dementia. And I think you have a few questions for me tonight, Debbie, on this topic.
Yes, I do, Dr. Duplantis. I was just wondering, what is your background, your educational background that makes you an expert?
My academic background is I'm a doctor of medicine, doctor of chiropractic, master's in exercise physiology, diplomated with the Chiropractic Board of Examiners, and also a licensed doctor of chiropractic here in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Great. So can you tell us what is Alzheimer's disease? Can you break it down for us?
Alzheimer's is a neurodegenerative disorder of the brain. It's the brain undergoes cellular death. The brain cells start to die, and it starts off in a gradual process, and over time it completely destroys the brain eventually. Usually it takes about 9 to 10 years. From the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, they usually live about 10 years before they die as a result of the same disease. You have about 4.5 to 5 million people in America with Alzheimer's disease currently, and it's about $100 billion social and medical cost to the American people as well. And it was first coined as a term, Alzheimer's, by Dr. Alois Alzheimer in 1906, 1907, when he discovered in one of his female patients who had an intellectual decline or deterioration that upon autopsy there were these senile plaques that they discovered on microscopic examination, and thereby you got the term Alzheimer's disease back in 1907.
Senile plaque?
Senile plaques, and I think the early term eventually became, after studying and research, as an amyloid beta plaque that occurs in the brain.
Very interesting. So what are some of the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease that people should be looking for or worried about?
It kind of presents early on as, memory. You're losing your memory. You're very forgetful. There's a problem of word finding in conversation when you're speaking. Also, there's some visual spatial problems where you become disoriented, and you may be traveling from the grocery store back to your house, a path you've taken 1,000 times, and you get lost. And that's the visual spatial aspect of Alzheimer's disease, one of the symptoms. Mm-hmm. But it can cause what we call apraxia. People will have difficulty buttoning their shirts. They'll have difficulty dressing. They can't comb their hair. They can't operate an appliance. And this presents quite a problem for somebody living by themselves and being self-sufficient and mechanically can't do these things because of this apraxia. They also have a condition of aphasia, which is loss of language. As I mentioned, they lose the ability to find words when they're speaking. And these are the very, very early stages of Alzheimer's. And but family members start to know these subtle things that makes them wonder about their loved one.
Yeah, I can remember my father-in-law, before he passed, had Alzheimer's, or they called it dementia, and he got lost going to the dentist, and that's when my mother-in-law knew there was a problem. And it's very scary for families.
It is, and the caretakers of the Alzheimer's patient really, they have their issues as well, depression, and can you imagine, it's very frustrating to have a spouse or a close family member or a mother that comes down with Alzheimer's and having the frustrations of working with her or that person through the various trials and challenges that you have with them. Very stressful.
Very hard on them, yeah. Especially when they won't accept help.
Sure, yes, yeah, denial.
What is meant by a cognitive reserve hypothesis in Alzheimer's disease?
Well, cognitive reserve is the intellectual abilities, or I guess your level of intelligence, also your level of formal education. And the hypothesis goes that, it's thought that the more education you have, the more circuitry you have in the brain, and more wiring. In other words, kind of think of it as wiring a house. You have a lot more wiring going out into the brain in someone who is formally educated. and someone who reads and applies themselves and studies and learns new things, you have the same thing happening. And so those people, when they contract Alzheimer's, they have a little bit more reserve than the person with less education or less circuitry, in other words, less wiring in the brain itself. So yeah, and so they become, I guess, more incapacitated quicker, you know, from the ravages of Alzheimer's.
So what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Well, it's a form of dementia. It's about 60 to 80% of people, you know, with dementia have Alzheimer's. You know, there's frontal lobe dementia, which is called Pick's disease, and it is presenting differently from Alzheimer's, but it is a dementia. You know, you've got, like I said, that, and then there's normal pressure hydrocephalus. People have dementia with that too. And you know, you delineate all these things. We call it differential diagnosis when someone comes in with these type of symptoms of memory or cognitive impairment, inability to make decisions and remember things, and their judgment has become questioned. There's a whole series, battery of tests that you do, but you delineate, you want to find out, you know, is this reversible dementia, or we have something that's permanent? Like
I imagine it's difficult if the couple that comes in and one is ill and the other one isn't, and they're elderly. It's difficult to help the caregiver understand what's going on.
Well, the caregiver can give you a great deal of information on that patient. They can really tell you what the patient was like previously, and it can tell you what the patient's like now. Now, unless this patient has been under your, and you know, as a physician, you've taken care of this patient all their life, then you have a baseline of, you know, where they were before. But if you haven't, and the patient comes to a doctor anew, they really rely on the caretakers, the spouse, the children to kind of fill them in on what's been going on.
So you shouldn't let your spouse go to the doctor alone.
No, not with Alzheimer's. No.
And what role, or what are the risk factors of Alzheimer's disease? In other words, who's at more risk than others?
Well, 65 and older are the people that are at risk for Alzheimer's disease. And, you know, Alzheimer's doubles the prevalence to develop Alzheimer's, I might add, doubles every 5 years from 65 to 95. Now, after 95, it pretty much levels off. I mean, you know, people live that long, but it doubles every 5 years. So progressively, your chance of getting Alzheimer's as you age towards 75 and 80 is much greater, of course.
So it's basically age related, or are there certain
that's just
conditions?
one risk. That's one risk. There are other conditions. Previous head trauma. You know, you see all these, hear about the stories of all these football players who develop, have all these concussions when they're playing professional football, and that is a big issue right now. And these people with all these head injuries, these closed head injuries, we call them, concussions, suffer dementia. You know, just like as the punch-drunk boxer, a fighter, would develop dementia, pugilistic dementia, it's called, from taking too many punches. You know, the brain gets rattled around and taking a lot of trauma like that. And these individuals develop, you know, a form of dementia, you know, Alzheimer's. Other risk factors as well. There's a gene. If you have this gene in your body, you know, in your genetic code, that you could get Alzheimer's, that you're at risk for Alzheimer's, that you inherit from your parents, and it's called the ApoE4 gene. It's on a chromosome 19 for anyone's interested in specifics about that. If you have that gene, you have a higher chance of getting and contracting Alzheimer's. Now, we live in an age now where you can go in and look at the DNA, and you can look at, and you can find out what you're going to have and what you're predisposed genetically to have in the future. They don't advise people to do that. You know, if you don't have Alzheimer's, they don't advise you to go in and find your status out on the ApoE4 gene. It's just public consensus in the medical community right now.
I would think the more information a patient was armed with, the better they would be to take care of themselves.
Well, it falls under the situation of being reimbursed for the condition or the acquiring of medical coverage and medical insurance. That was one of the arguments before Obamacare. What it is now, I'm not sure, post this change in medicine. Another aspect of it is, you mentioned some other conditions, and there are vascular conditions and metabolic conditions that predispose an individual to Alzheimer's. Diabetes, for one thing, you know, can predispose somebody to Alzheimer's. Cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, silent strokes, high cholesterol as well can predispose someone to Alzheimer's disease, put them at risk, so to speak. People who have sleep apnea, are thought to have, that's something that can cause a great deal of issues and problems for somebody in other conditions, such as you can give them various medical conditions, can cause a stroke, in their sleep, and it could be a silent stroke, or, these people don't realize it and they've had it, and then this puts them at risk or predisposes them more readily than someone who did not have that to have Alzheimer's disease as well. Also, coming to light recently, the benzodiazepines in 2013. 2013, they came out with an article that benzodiazepines, talking about Valium, we're talking about the most popular drug in that family, would be Xanax or Prazolam. And this drug is used for panic attacks, it's used for anxiety, it's used for insomnia. So the habitual use of benzodiazepine has kind of been tied into, another factor that could possibly lead to Alzheimer's as well. And also depression, is another thing thought that depression, someone who has chronic depression can put them at risk for Alzheimer's as well. But there's quite a few risk factors, and all those things need to be taken in consideration and when you're looking at a patient with Alzheimer's disease.
So it's important to coordinate care if they have several physicians.
Well, each doctor should know what's taking place as far as the treatment, yes.
So how is it diagnosed? How is Alzheimer's disease diagnosed in a patient?
Well, it's really a clinical call, and it's backed up with a lot of lab work. And of course, patient comes in, you take a medical history like you would on anyone else. Then you would do a physical exam. Then you do a neurological exam on that patient, checking all the 12 cranial nerves and checking the person out neurologically. Then you give some kind of cognitive test. What'd you have for breakfast this morning? Mm-hmm. Count backwards from 100 by 7 for me. Who's the President of the United States currently? What is the year that we're in right now? We would tell them hat, ball, tree. And give them those 3 names, hat, ball, and tree. And you continue to talk to them. And 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, you ask them, what were the 3 names that I gave you? And if they can name all 3 of them, you're pretty much, the patient's okay, and maybe start looking for something else that's called. They can name 2 of the 3, maybe so. They can name 1 or can't name any, then, you need to look really hard. This patient is highly likely this person has dementia and maybe Alzheimer's. The lab work that is done, you do a thyroid panel on the person that comes in with memory or, thinking problems or whatever, loss of focus. Loved ones are concerned about them. You do a thyroid panel because hypothyroidism can give rise to memory issues. It's our thyroid hormone that makes us bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, really. If your thyroid is low, you're not going to be all perky and, up, so to speak, and not going to be mentally sharp if you don't have good thyroid function. Number 2, B12 deficiency. So you want to be healthy and you go on a vegetation, strictly become a vegetarian and just eat vegetables. And about after 2 years, you start, having memory problems. Well, you have about 2 years of storage of B12 in the body currently, okay? If you were to stop eating red meat or meat in general, and you just went strictly vegetables, in about 2 years, you would deplete those B12 storage, and you would have the symptoms of memory. You'd have some tingling in your lower extremity and that type of stuff. And so that would kind of key you into,
So meat,
my spouse
protein is a source of
B12.
B12.
Your B12, yeah, and liver, and all those type of foods. But if you go completely from no meat in your diet to all vegetables, within a matter of 2 years, if you don't supplement B12, you would have B12 deficiency. And B12 is good for memory. They tell people if you want a good memory, you should do the B complex, take the B complex vitamins, and included in that, of course, is B12.
Now, is that the one that people go in for injections for when they are?
Yes, it is. And but there are sublingual forms of B12 that you can take that work just as good, under the tongue. And as a matter of fact, the last couple of years have been a shortage of B12 nationwide. It's hard to get injectable B12. They're on back order, and it's been the last couple of years. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah, there's been a shortage of B12 injectable medication. So people can take the, and they work. You can take the sublingual B12, and people do, and then they check their levels and they're up, so it does work.
So sublingual, you said put under the tongue.
Under the tongue.
So
correct.
That's not a pill. It's
It is a pill. It comes in. It could be a pill or it could be a couple of drops. It's dispensed in a pill form, which will dissolve. You have a lot of vasculature under the tongue, which can absorb that easily. So yeah, that works fine.
So that's why patients that have heart problems put the
yes, it's a direct delivery for the vascular system. It goes right into the circulatory system, and then with the B12, it bypasses the gastrointestinal tract, where it does not become broken down. So you utilize it 100% right there, and it's absorbed in the blood, which is a quick delivery system. Also, besides the B12 test, you want to test the person. You want to do a complete metabolic profile. You want to look at their liver enzymes. If you've got liver issues, you're alcoholic, or you could be drug related. I mean, a number of reasons. Fatty liver disease. You're going to have a high, your transaminases, the component called AST and LFT transaminases will be elevated greatly. And, if you have liver failure, that can cause memory problems. So you want to look at those liver enzymes. Liver failure produces what we call hepatoencephalopathy. The liver fails. Liver is the organ that clears ammonia from the body. And if you have liver failure, these ammonia levels start to build and build and build, and then you get a form of dementia from this elevated hyperammonemia, they call it. And so that can be very serious. So you want to check those things out. Something that's a little bit more far-fetched, but you still look at it, is you want to do a syphilis test. That can cause dementia, but we have pretty much eradicated that through our antibiotics.
But that can be cured if they get...
That's reversible. Those are reversible. And HIV, And then also, I didn't mention it, but, patients can come in with memory issues and rapidly go into decline, and the family members are just shocked over it if they have electrolyte disturbances, especially sodium. And older person will come in all the time from nursing homes because of the sodium in disarray, and they have delirium because of the fact that the sodium is out of balance. And once they're given fluids and that's taken care of, they come back completely. But Alzheimer's is a gradually, and it's progressive over months. Delirium happens over a couple of days. It's rapid. I mean, they go down immediately, whereas Alzheimer's, you can just see a steady, things are getting worse and worse and worse as time progresses on. And, but you do the electrolyte panel that's done in the CMP, complete metabolic profile, that will tell you where the sodium, the potassium, and all your electrolytes are at. If they're anemic, you'll find that out too in the CBC, and where they are, and then that kind of points you in the direction of checking out the B12. But those are by the American Academy of Neurology, their guidelines for someone who comes in with that. That's what it is. You do the thyroid panel, you do a CBC, you do the complete metabolic profile, you do, and you check the B12 levels. And then those other tests I mentioned, the HIV, and those are secondary tests that can be run. And then also the MRI and CT scan, because at certain stages in Alzheimer's, there is shrinkage of a part of the brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of the brain that stores memories. This is where our short-term memory of something that happened in the day becomes permanently ingrained in the brain and becomes a long-term memory. And it usually happens in a process we call consolidation. Our memories become permanent at night when we sleep. That's all that's processed. While we're sleeping, the brain is completely awake and doing all these functions at a high level of efficiency, and things that we take for granted. And that's what happens. But you see a shrinking of those parts of the brain with an MRI. And that's another thing that kind of points you in that direction. But you rely a great deal on a clinical judgment as well, too. But it's a correlation of putting that together.
So it's important that you go to the right physician. Your family physician might not be the one to diagnose it. He may refer you to a neurologist.
Well, he's the first person to go to.
Yeah.
Your family practice physician or your internal medicine doctor is the first person you go to. I mean, he may be able to catch something initially that the, lay person, the family member doesn't recognize, and at that level it can be taken care of and it's reversible, and they spot it immediately, and there's no need to see a neurologist. And then the internal medicine physician, the family practice doctor, will go on to refer that person to the right specialist. In this case, it would be a neurologist. Yes.
Interesting. So we've talked about some of the lab work and imaging studies. What is the peanut butter test for Alzheimer's?
You know, I heard of this recently, and this goes back, I think, 2013 in the American, there's a Journal of Neurobiology, where they took a tablespoon of peanut butter, and this was a study that was actually done, people who had Alzheimer's, and those who didn't, and they would take it, and they had a ruler, a centimeter ruler, and they would measure when it got closer, and they would close one nostril and let the person, and they would be blindfolded, and bring it closer and closer. Now, when it got within 17 centimeters on the right nostril, the patient with Alzheimer's could discern it was peanut butter. Okay. On the left side, it had to be as close as 4 centimeters. So, and that was true through the large population of people that they did the study on, conducted the study. You know, it's not gold standard, as we say in medicine. It's something that this is the, you do this test, and if it's positive, they have it. It's not a gold standard test for us in the diagnosis of Alzheimer's at this time, but it's something they're looking at.
It's something out there floating on the internet.
Well, it's a study, a legitimate study that has been done, and it's been produced in a peer-reviewed journal of high repute, and so you have to kind of respect it. But
you wonder what made them study peanut butter and Alzheimer's.
You never know.
I know.
Good question.
What is the protocol or the medical treatment for an Alzheimer's patient when they're first diagnosed?
You know, we're 6 years behind the decade of the brain. You know, we had the decade of the brain where the big focus was the new frontier, because we've discovered, we pretty much know as much as we're going to know about the heart, and that's been, thoroughly researched, and I'm sure many new things can occur, but the brain is a new frontier. Neuroscience is a brand new frontier. For a long time, we thought that all your brain cells came in at 14. By 14, you had everything you're going to have as equipment-wise in your head, and you're going to go from there. No, that's not true. Eric Kendall, a Nobel Prize laureate in medicine, with his discovery that we do produce new brain cells, and neurogenesis does occur at every age. So we are able to produce new brain cells even at this time, and up to whatever age, which is a good thing. One thing is to produce the brain cell, another thing is to orchestrate it and bring it into concert with the rest of the brain cells.
So is there a particular drug that helps to regenerate and help them to get new brain cells, or for the treatment, is it?
Well, no, but it's a good question, and I'm going to save that for a little bit later in your questions. But so I don't want to answer that just right now.
Okay.
But I will go on. There are 5 drugs. So we only have 5 drugs now for treating Alzheimer's, and this condition has been around for quite a long time, and we've been dealing with it. We have a group of drugs called acetylcholine esterase inhibitors. It's a big word. Between each nerve cell, there is a junction. There is like a space, and they're connected by this space. Now, in medicine, we call it the synapse. Okay, this space is given a name, the synapse. In this space, one cell is talking to the next cell, and he's producing a compound, a chemical compound. We're all about electricity. Our whole bodies, we're just one big electrical plant here, when you think about it. And so that's how the brain is. And so when that spark from that one brain cell goes to the next one, it's going to travel through that synapse, and the way it does is through this compound called, a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. There's no way to say that any other way. And so this little chemical is a spark to set the other brain cell off, to set the message down the line, to keep talking to the rest of the brain cells. It's a constant chatter in the brain. All the cells are chattering back and forth. They're all intercommunicating throughout the body. All the organ systems do. And so that's the miracle of a human body.
So when your stomach is growling, it's your cells talking to you saying, eat.
at a high level. They're screaming. They're screaming at that level, yeah. But anyway, but the 5 drugs are, these drugs are, Tacrin was the first drug that came out in this classification. And the whole thing about Alzheimer's, like I said, you know, I'm going to maybe digress or maybe get ahead of myself. I don't know which here. Alzheimer's kind of is laid down by a couple of factors. It's the deposit of what we call amyloid beta protein that becomes deposited outside these little cells in the brain on the outside. And they develop, it's a sticky protein, and it actually becomes like a plaque on that cell wall, on the outer covering of that cell. And it impedes or slows down that transmission of that cell talking to the next cell. It impedes neurotransmission, in other words.
Right.
And so it can't relay the message. It can't retrieve information. That's what memory's about. You go to different parts of the brain for memory, and where it's stored globally throughout the brain. And so what happens is, if you can increase more production of acetylcholine and you can decrease this compound from being broken down, then you might have better communication taking place. Okay, so to maximize that, there is an enzyme, a chemical, in that little junction between the 2 cells, in that little synaptic junction, called acetylcholine esterase, the big name. That enzyme, when the acetylcholine is released, the neurotransmitter, for excitatory neurotransmitter, is released, this esterase comes in, the enzyme, and destroys it after, because it has its effect. It communicates with the next cell, and then it doesn't want it to keep bombarding that cell again and again, so it's taken out of that junction. Miraculously, how the body, you know, functions really when you get to the cellular level. And so that's taken out of the picture. The whole thing about Alzheimer's is, you know, the plaques I just talked about, these amyloid beta plaques, that's what they're called, and also these neurofibrillary tangles inside the cell. You have something that on the outside that's against the wall of these cells, is beta, these amyloid plaques, and then on the inside you have something called neurofibrillary tangles. Another word, and the language of medicine can be cumbersome somewhat, but I'm trying to bring this to you to break it down. So this other component, it's a different protein, it's also causing destruction inside the cell, but internally. And it's from a protein we call the TAR protein inside that cell. These are the 2 processes that wreak havoc in your brain, because those 2 processes, the amyloid beta and the neurofibrillary tangles inside, discovered by scientists, you know, years ago, as the pathogenesis of the cause of Alzheimer's, bring and slow down transmission, and they make it impossible for new memories to be formed. And the third component is we're not producing enough of the neurotransmitters, the acetylcholine, that spark, that chemical that can give that spark from one cell to another, that communication that we need is so vital in the brain for memories and memory storage. So what we want to do is, we want to boost it. I kind of regressed back, gave you a quick little info on the pathology of it, and then coming back forward again, and then with the drugs. So we're talking about the drugs so that you understand this whole concept. The drugs come in and they cut down the destruction and allow more of the spark. So when you have slow movement or communication from one cell to the other, and you have more spark transmitter, this neurotransmitter, it's chemical, is what it is, a chemical compound. What happens is, you can preserve it, and then you can keep it around a lot longer, and it kind of increases the function of that person. They're not going to go down as fast. Well, now, and the drugs, the drugs are, like I said, the Tacrin. Donepezil is another one. It's very popular, and Tacrin has kind of fallen out of use because of the effect on the liver, but it's still used. Some people don't have that problem. But Donepezil, which is Aricept, is his drug name. Rivastigmine is another one. Exelon is the name of that. And then, glantamine, is another. Say in Depernyl or Aricept, they start off on a low dose, 5 milligrams, and for the first 30 days, and then they go up to 10 milligrams. It's titrated up. If they stop the drug, now the side effect is GI disturbance, because acetylcholine, that compound, stimulates not only the brain but also the gut. and it
and
causes
some
any other parts
of the anatomy.
Exactly. Yeah, it
I've
speeds things up.
heard of some
yeah.
interesting side effects
Well,
from Aricept.
it causes maybe excessive hydrochloric acid production. The hydrochloric acid can give you maybe ulcers, maybe reflux. You're more prone to reflux. You get more acid in the stomach area, so you can have GI upset. They just term they term it as GI
libido
upset.
is increased
Well,
in some older gentlemen.
I think that's the psychosis and agitation part of the disease that comes along a little bit later. That's because it's a gradual process to where you become, person can't talk anymore. Not only can they not button their shirt, shave, or comb their hair, but they can't talk. You cannot communicate with that person. It's a sad and tragic thing to happen. And eventually they die because the brain is completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Everything is the central nervous system. The brain is the whole control center for everything in the body. And when that starts to die cell by cell and globally, then systems start shutting down. And that's what you're losing memory first, you're losing those aspects first, and then you lose more deeper parts of the brain more progressively later.
And that's at the end of the disease. At the beginning of the disease, if you intervene before it gets serious, are there other things that you can do besides just drug therapy, like making them do crossword puzzles and just utilizing their brain more, exercise, or does any of that help?
Yeah, that does. Up to some extent. Like I said, the drugs will give you more function, but the drugs do not prolong your life. The death of the cells still goes on. These plaques continue to take over, and this other component, the neurofibrillary tangles, the plaquing, it continues to progress. And so those acetylcholine esterase inhibitors do not affect that. And
say that 3 times fast.
Huh?
Estrocholase inhibitors?
Acetylcholine esterase inhibitors don't address that. They can't. They only address keeping the acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter chemical compound in the synapse, the junction between the two brain cells, longer, okay, to give them more function, longer function, which is good for the person and good for the caretaker. They don't have to deal, they have someone that they can kind of work with a little bit better. But there are other things that when we get to the fact of what can be done, can you prevent this? If you know that your diabetes is a causative factor, if cardiovascular disease is a causative factor, if you know that all these things can play a role in this, then you need to get your diabetes in line. You need to lower your blood pressure because that's a factor. You need to take care of your cholesterol. Exercise. It's found that exercise increases a compound called nerve growth factor. Nerve growth factor has the ability in the brain to stimulate neurogenesis, which is brain cell formation. We talked about the brain still generating new brain cells. Well, these brain cells can be produced by exercise, specifically aerobic exercise. They've done aerobic exercise in elderly individuals. They give them cognitive tests. They measure their cognitive abilities prior to and after a regimen of exercise for 6 to 8 weeks, 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week, and they scored much higher after. So, and plus the other studies that they've done prove the fact that exercise can prevent the formation of these amyloid plaques. So exercise is one of your best defenses against Alzheimer's. So the evidence shows us that. Another thing is, the use of green tea. Green tea is something that, green tea is from Camellia senescens, it's a plant. It has a lot of catechins in it. That's what's responsible for, preventing Alzheimer type plaques, the amyloid plaques, or do not grow. They're not formed when people drink a great deal of green tea or the green tea extract is used. Number 2, if they have the plaques, these plaques can dissolve to some extent. They've found through laboratory mice. They've also done tests on the mice that memory capacity has improved through running these same mice through various mazes and testing their memory, that the green tea also stimulated memory formation as well, improved their memory in the laboratory animals. So green tea is very effective. There's a compound, the big compound that's It's another epigalactocatechin 3-galactate, abbreviated ECGC for obvious reasons. It shortens it up. That compound is very powerful in preventing the formation of these amyloid plaques, which is the destruction part of our memory. Number two, in the hippocampus, the memory part of the brain. Number two, also, it helps to break down to a certain extent. It's been found that it does help to dissolve and disintegrate that to a certain extent as well. And then also causes neurogenesis. Again, can produce new brain cells. And this is remarkable. And green tea, I have to classify that as a superfood because it does so much. It also repairs damaged DNA, green tea does.
And just your typical
ECGC.
off-the-shelf, any green tea would be
Correct.
good to put in your daily diet?
Exactly. I've been drinking green tea for 10 years. Listen, my health is my hobby. I practice what I preach. I walk the talk. It's simply that, I take this serious. I live this. And I tell my friends, I've told my friends I drink a gallon. So they've come over and they see 4 gallons of green tea sitting on the floor. They said, "You really do like green tea?" I said, "I think it's important." And I have for 10 years. Excellent for cardiovascular, to reduce cardiovascular disease as well, because it's rich in antioxidants. And we talked about antioxidants and oxidation and inflammation in Alzheimer's. It occurs in all cells and even occurs in cardiovascular disease. This free radical damage, this oxidative stress, as we call it, it produces a lot of neuro problems. Parkinson's disease is through the oxidative stress in the substantia nigra, through the decrease in production of dopamine. We have that. But so oxidative stress takes a toll on the body and every organ in the body, but the heart as well, and the vascular system especially. So green tea addresses that inflammation. It addresses that oxidation damage, that free radical damage. Free radical damage is like you have a happy couple over here, and you have a single person here, and these two people are happy, and this person goes over and hooks up with one of those members and leaves one person out of the circle, and you've got 2 happy people and one really irritated, and he's going to the next cell to grab, because he wants
another partner.
Yeah, something was taken from him. He needs a balance. So these cells are looking for a balance. Actually, it's a part in their chemical balance, so to speak. Okay, and they're trying to neutralize themselves. So they constantly go around bombarding, and these antioxidants buffer this process. Okay, so you have less inflammation and less damage, to the brain. And so green tea is very good. Also, another adjunct to exercise and green tea that you can do preventatively. Now, after you have Alzheimer's, hey, listen, I don't know how effective it would be or if it would maybe give you more function, but the key thing is to do it now before you have any issues whatsoever. It's a part of staying healthy. I mean, you're talking about your heart. Green tea is good for a person that has diabetes. If you want to lose weight, it has a thermogenic process where it speeds up metabolism. You'll lose weight by just drinking green tea. If you don't take any more calories in and you start drinking green tea, you could lose a few pounds maybe over time.
How much green tea a day should a person drink?
I don't have it down to exact science, but I think if you drink 2 or 3 glasses, I drink about a gallon a week, personally, and I have for the last 10 years, actually. I love the taste of it. I won't say what brand or anything, but I like green tea. I like it sweetened with honey, as it comes. So, it's a very, very good beverage. I call it a superfood because it addresses cancer. There is a 60% reduction in cancer. This is research. This is not, hearsay. This is not anecdotal evidence. This is hard data. This is evidence-based medicine I'm talking. I don't say anything that's just backroom suggestions or ideas or opinions or old wives' tales. I don't dabble into that.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah. This is hard stuff. I mean, this is things that has come out, and omega-3 fatty acids, the fish oil, the good fats. Is very good for us, especially the DHA component of that, which is very, very good. But, you add these things up, the green tea, the exercise, and, another thing that predisposes you to Alzheimer's is obesity. But that central obesity around the waistline, we call it centralized obesity. they develop as they age. Another factor as far as prevention and how you can address this is testosterone and estrogen progesterone. Testosterone is felt that testosterone improves memory. The receptor sites, so there's a function in the brain for testosterone, and it's to improve memory, to maintain memory. And as we get older, men go through what we call andropause, the androgens, and women have menopause. You know, and women have been talking about menopause for years, but men, you know, if we're not don't have that strong of a voice, we've drowned out by the women, and we have andropause, but nobody cares. And we've been forgotten.
Oh, they care. They care.
It's
not called that in
but anyway,
layman circles.
Yeah,
but
true. I'm just a little pun here. No, it really does. It's helpful, and you know you have to make a decision if you want to do hormone therapy with estrogen progesterone, because it is good for the brain, okay, in the woman, and for the male, testosterone is very important to replace the men.
But for some women, estrogen therapy can also put them at higher risk if they're predisposed to other things. So
it's a conversation. But I'm just saying, when we say what's possible you want to prevent the risk of Alzheimer's, that's one of the things.
Right.
It's very plausible. You do that, and it's very good. You know, this is a preventative measure that you won't get Alzheimer's, because you know lack of testosterone predisposes you to Alzheimer's. You know, and lack of estrogen and progesterone as well predisposes. But like I said, you know, you have issues of the breast cancer and the other issues as well, and it's a conversation whether the benefits outweigh the risk. And you have to look, and also we haven't mentioned this, but family history. If you have a mother that had Alzheimer's, and you had a grandmother that had Alzheimer's, then you know I would be looking to really watch my diet, get healthy, exercise. I'd really kind of be concerned. I would look at things, you know, differently. I mean, not to be panicked, but just take those precautionary, easy measures. Drinking green tea or taking a capsule that has green tea extract in it would be fine. But you know, it's very important. You know, you have to look at the genetics as well. And if you exercise 3 times a week, 30 minutes a day, you'll have a sharper memory. Even if you're never going to get Alzheimer's, it's going to keep your brain sharp. It really will, because you're making these connections that we talked about between these 2 nerve cells, these 2 brain cells. Stronger, and you're able to allow them to communicate a lot better, so you're going to be smarter. Your retrieval of information is going to be quicker, actually, and so your brain is going to be more fluid. Your intelligence.
So I have to quit being allergic to exercise. I need to start exercising.
You need to move. You need to move. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. You have to really get up and start moving around a little bit. You know, for 30
Eat less,
minutes a day.
move more, and drink green tea.
Exactly. Well, caloric restriction. We mentioned diet. Caloric restriction is very important. It helps to prevent Alzheimer's. And the people with caloric restriction, this has been tested in primates over 25 years at a study out of Wisconsin. And there was a doctor on the West Coast in Los Angeles who did a lot of early on caloric restriction work on mice. He thought he was a mouse doctor rather than a human doctor. He was a pathologist. And he studied longevity. And definitely the mice lived a third years longer, did not have cardiovascular disease, did not have the tumors that the other normal mice had that ate regular diet. Now they did a study with primates for 25 years. This is back in 2013. It finally came to a close in the research, and we're close to the primate, you know, in the vertebrata phylum and genetic system. You know, we walk upright, you know, we have the same appendages, and anatomically there's a very closeness there. And so, you know, but we're different. We're not the monkeys. And you know, their metabolism very close to the human. You can't get any closer than the primate or the monkeys. And so the caloric restriction on these animals proved that they lived a third of lifetime longer, did not have the cardiovascular issues, did not have the diabetes issues, did not have all those things that we have in the Western world because of our diet and our lack of lifestyle of exercise and fitness and staying healthy. And it's really all about that. I really think it is. You know, it's a devastating disease, folks, and you don't want to get it. And sometimes, you know, we think that because the die is cast that you know, there's nothing you can do, but there is something you can do. A lot of research recently has come out of the fact you can change your genes. You can change the shape of your life. You know, we call it in the brain neuroplasticity, the ability to increase your knowledge. The plasticity means ability to grow.
Mm-hmm.
People that have brain damage, after the brain damage, they go through a rehab, a cognitive rehab program, and the brain is so resilient, it comes back from that stroke. There's a lot of damage in the neurocircuitry in someone who suffers a stroke. The brain comes back from that to a certain extent. Some people fully, others, partially. Right. But there is a regenerative process, we call it plasticity, that ability to repair itself. And the brain has the ability to grow, to become stronger. My professor in medical told me, he said, the brain, like the muscle, like the bicep, the more you challenge, the stronger and the powerful it gets. And it's true, it's like exercise. You have to keep revisiting that material and the level of interest and the focus on that. But, we can move in that area with the plasticity of the brain, just the biological makeup of our body, what it can do. It's awesomely powerful, it's a miracle. I would take these measures. I would definitely do the lifestyle modification type things. I would watch the diet. I would maybe increase omega-3 fish oil in my diet. I would drink the green tea. I think it's good. I love the taste of it, actually. And it's a very refreshing cold beverage. And, I would just do those things. Another compound that some people like to take for the memory is a compound called pregnenolone. It's an over-the-counter natural hormone. And another compound would be acetyl-L-carnitine and CoQ10. These two compounds, CoQ10, ubiquinone, and also, these two supplements can together increase mitochondrial function. Acetyl-L-carnitine addresses the mitochondria. This is the spark. The mitochondria of the cells is what we call an organelle, a little factory in each cell throughout the body. What these factories do is they manufacture your energy. That spark, what's called ATP, that gets everything going. It causes the protein to be synthesized and all the little functions of the cell to take place in an orderly fashion. So, the mitochondria is very important. So keeping it healthy, and even in the mitochondria of the brain, very important, right. And the heart especially too. So those supplements are very beneficial. I thoroughly believe in them. I've been taking nutraceuticals, which are vitamins and supplements for, 25 years. I've read early on Adele Davis's work, the work of Emanuel Sharaskin and Carlton Fredericks, dentists that were nutritionists in the 70s, 80s. I've interviewed Linus Pauling in the past on vitamin C from Big Sur in California. I had a radio show called Here's to Your Health, and interviewed some of these scientists and biochemists, and so I've been engaged with this material, I guess you could say, all of my life, my early life, and also read a lot of the work by many of the other scientists and physicians that are more nutrition oriented as well. And I think nutrition plays a big part. One thing about nutrition, there's no side effects. If you eat too much, you might gain a little weight, and that's the only side effect. But I like my pantry to think about the pantry where I keep my food as my pharmacy, and my food is my medicine, and my medicine is my food. Hippocrates said that. Let your food be your medicine, let your medicine be your food. So and I thoroughly believe that. I think the people who live to be, a ripe old age and still functionally, physically, and mentally, are people who take care of themselves, eat proper nutrition, and just do the things that you should do to just maintain your health and preserve yourself.
Well, God only gives you one body, so you have to take care of it. And it reminds me of a TV show that I saw that was a comedy with Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn. And they took this elixir, which was the fountain of youth, and the girl that gave it to them, Isabella Rossellini, says, make sure to take care of your body because you only have one. And the comedy was really, had a lot of things about, they would shoot each other and they'd have a hole, so they'd have to plaster it back together, but they were still alive. But so you need to take care of your body. You
sure do. Yeah, if we wear out our bodies, we don't have any other place to live, as they say. And you can go through life with a Volkswagen, or you can go through life with a Rolls Royce. I read this in a book when I was about 12. 13, and and it's kind of fun. It sounds funny. I mean, now I look back and kind of laugh. But I bought in. I said, hey, that makes a lot of sense to me. I don't want to be in a Volkswagen. And I've trained and taken care of. I've tried to take care of myself all of my life. I've trained for 45 years, to be exact. And there have been points and times when I could not train, of course, got away from it. But I always got back to training, got back into shape because, it's a health thing. It really, has preserved my health, I think, up to this time. But anyway, folks, I hope you've gotten some very valuable points out of our program today. We've talked about Alzheimer's disease, dementia. I hope you've picked up some things that you can put into your lifestyle, things that you can change and tweak that will make you smarter, brighter, sharper from now on. And want to wish you the best of health. Want to wish you a very happy new year. Keep those resolutions. Stay fast to those changes you want to make, those improvements in your life. This is January. We're all making these resolutions of what we're going to change, how we're going to improve. What's your New Year's resolution?
I don't do resolutions. I do goals.
Well, that's good.
And I take them one step at a time.
Good.
So mine is to continue to lose weight.
Well, good. Well, that's awesome. Let's continue to stay on a healthy path, and that's mine as well. Continue to stay healthy, continue to stay strong, to continue to learn as much as I can because, no one knows it all. And you never learn everything there is to learn. And we're always making progress. There's always new things. So it's an unending task to keep up with the latest things that are out there in nutrition and in medicine and science. And it's very intriguing things that are happening. And so I continue to dedicate myself to study, to reading, and to staying current with medicine, science, and nutritional sciences as well. I think that's vitally important. I want to wish you a pleasant good evening. I hope you have a very happy new year. God bless you. Have a pleasant evening.